Alright, good day everyone and welcome to today's video. So today what we're going to go through is just some practice examples of the way that we can utilize the previous data types in programming, and this should sort of solidify your understanding of each data type and why we might actually pick one over the other. Okay, so in this first example we have here just a little sort of statement that says create a program that asks a user for test scores for multiple subjects and returns the average score. So we're going to get an input that's like this, and then we're going to return the average score. So the way that we do that is we're going to go ahead and we're going to first ask the user to enter their scores. So we're going to make a variable called scores and assign it to an input just like this, and we're going to say enter your test scores. Okay, from here what we're going to do is we're going to split the scores based on the default, which the default here is the white space. Okay, and then what I'm going to do now is to just show you how these scores will be separated into a list. Okay, so when I run this, what we're going to see is we're going to see the input over here that we have, which says enter your test scores. From here I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to type in my test scores, and then I'm going to print the scores. And as you can see, we're creating a list here utilizing this split method. Okay, so the split method default is to just split the items based on the white space in between them. You can specify what you want to split it on, so we might want to split it on a comma if the user's entering the values up here separated by commas, but for now we're just going to use the default. Okay, so once we've done that, we have and we've split them into a list like this. Then what we want to do is we want to be able to work with the numbers that are in here, and the way to do that is to cast them as numbers, which is either integers or floats or something like that we can work with to do mathematical operations. Okay, so at the moment they are strings denoted by the quotation marks. If we want to use mathematical operations, we have to convert them to floats or integers in this case, and I'm going to choose floats because there's an instance where someone might get 4.5 or a half mark. Now the way that we do this is we say that our scores are going to be a list. Okay, and we want the list items to be a float, and then we want to iterate through them so that each item in this particular list here is a float. Okay, now that might be really confusing, so I'm just going to go over to my sketchpad and explain actually what's going on here. Okay, so say that we get the entered values of 1, 2, 3 and 4. Okay, and each of these are a string. Okay, when we come back over here and we do this, we're saying that we want it to be a list and each item is going to be casted as a float. Okay, and then we're iterating through it. So when I write in, so I'm just going to type this in here. So when I put in the code that we had there, which was float I for I in input string. Okay, this is what we had. So this is our code that we had. What we're doing is we're going through each of these items, okay, in the list. So at the moment they are just strings, and then what we're doing is we're putting them into a new list, which is then called scores. Okay, so we're reassigning the scores list, which I'm pretty sure that's what it was called, was scores, yes. Okay, so we're reassigning this to a new list. Okay, so what this is doing is it's saying for I, so I becomes 1 initially, right? But it becomes 1 like this, so it becomes float 1. Okay, so we're casting that as a float, and then we're adding this into our list, and then we're doing it again here. We're going float, doing the casting function in the for loop, and we're casting 2 into this list. So what we're getting essentially is a list of the same values but casted as a float. And the reason I'm showing you this is to just sort of show you how this iterative process here using the for loop is casting these particular values to the value of a float. into a new list. Okay, so now what happens is when I print that list, so now when I print scores again, and I go through and I type in the same values, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I click enter, what you can see now is we've got a list of floats, okay? Now we can work with these and we can get the desired outcomes that we want. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a formatted string, and I'm going to put in exactly what they got up here. So the average score is, and then the equal sign, and then all I'm going to do is I'm going to do my curly braces here, and then I'm going to do my mathematical operations here. So I'm going to use sum. So sum is going to give me this sum of all the values in this particular list here, okay? Then I'm going to divide that by the length of the particular values that they put in. So for example, if I use this len function here that we've used previously, what you can see is that that'll actually return the amount of items in this list. So for example, if we used len here for scores in this instance, we will get a value return of 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and the sum here would just add all these values together and then return the total, right? And that's how you get averages. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the run up here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter in my scores. So let's say I get 100 on the first test, I get 50, and then I get 22. It's going to spit out my average, which the average is 57.33 reoccurring, okay? Perfect. So what we've done here is we've utilized a list initially using this split, and then we've casted the list values into floats, and then we've used a print statement and some mathematical operations down here, or built-in functions that have then returned our average score. Okay, so the next one is about a user. So the user is going to be entering a string, and we are going to find the unique words, and then we're going to print them back to the user. So here what we'll be using is a set. So the set, I don't know if you remember, is going to have unique values. So for example, if we try to add 1 to a set and 1's already in the set, it's not going to happen. It's just going to get the unique values, meaning that it won't have any repeating values in that particular set. So I'm going to have here user input as my variable, and I'm going to assign that to the input string that they enter, and then I'm going to split it. So what I'm essentially doing is splitting the words based on the white space, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to specify that I want a variable called unique words, and then I'm going to assign that to a set, and then insert this user input in here. Okay, so what that's going to do is if I have a string like this, just say I type in I like food, what it's going to do is it's going to return I like food as the unique words, because it won't save any of the repeatings in this particular set. Okay, now what I can do is I can print this back to the user, and if you remember in the previous video, what we used is a for loop. So we used for words in unique words, just like this. We're going to iterate through, and we're going to print the words. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment out this code above here, so we're not getting both of the little programs running at the same time. And then I'm going to run this and show you how it works. I'm going to enter a string. I'm going to enter this string right over here that I have. Okay. And then I'm going to click enter. And as you can see, it's going to return the unique values in an unordered sense. So it's returning food, I, and like. Okay. So that's how we use sets to get unique words out of users' inputs. Just one of the examples. All right, so in the next one, we have something similar, and this is just for more practice. We just have a user entering the grocery items, and we're just making sure there's no duplicates. And then we are returning that back to the user in the form of of each individual item. So what we can do is we can go ahead and just specify the same sort of variable with the user's input, and then we're just asking for the grocery items, and we're using split. However, what we're going to do now is we're going to use split via a comma. So the user is going to enter values and separate them with commas. Okay. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to get the unique items by casting it to a set. And then all we're going to do is we're going to go through another for loop, just like we did previously, and we're going to print out those unique items. So we should be printing items down here, okay? And then I'm going to run this, and I'm just going to enter my items. So I'm going to enter apples. I'll do repeated values as well, just to make sure that the set's working properly. I'm going to add in an orange and a pineapple. As you can see now, what we're getting is we're getting the unique values of apples, oranges, and pineapples. Now, because I used white space here, as you can see, it's still adding that to the set. So in future videos, I'm going to show you how to strip these white spaces so that when we're adding it to the set, we're not getting this sort of issue happening. But in essence, that's how we'd use a set to get unique items out of a grocery list. Just another example. All right, so now we're going to use tuples. So we're going to create a program that has user IDs in a tuple. So for example, we'd have user IDs just like this. So user IDs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to ask the user to enter their ID. And if the ID matches with one of the user IDs up here, then we're going to print access granted. Okay. So if not, we'll print access denied. And this is perfect because this goes into a perfect transition for our if, elif, and else statements, okay, that we're going to talk about in the next video. And this will just be a little bit of exposure to that. And they're very important when creating, I guess, different sort of roadmaps of how you want your program to be utilized. So what we're going to do here is we're going to have our user inputs denoted in this tuple. So why would we do that? Because we don't want this to be changed and we want it to stay and remain the same. So a tuple is immutable, meaning that it cannot be changed. So once it's set, it's set. Okay. Now what we're doing is we are asking for the user's input. So we're saying enter your user ID. Okay. Then what we're going to do is we are going to use our if statements. So we're going to say if the user input, okay, so if the user input is in the user IDs, then we'll print access granted, else we're going to print access denied. Okay. Now this is what we're going to be sort of introducing in the next videos. So what is happening here is I am saying, you know, if the user's input is in this particular tuple list up here, then what we're going to do is we're going to print this else. So if there's anything else inserted that's not in this, then we're just going to print access denied. All right, so now all I'm going to do is I'm just going to clear this and I'm just going to run this program to show you how it works. So if I add in my user ID and say it's 1, 2, 3, and I click enter, it's going to say access granted. And then if I run this again and I type in 222, it's going to say access denied. Okay, so basically what this is like a roadmap. So I'm just going to copy this over into our little sketchpad over here. And I'm just going to show you sort of what's going on. And I'm sure you can figure out what's going on as well. These are all smart. So I know that you will be able to understand this quite easily. Okay, so we've got our if statement and we've got our else statement just here. And I'm going to align this to the left-hand side, just so it makes it easier for you to see how this is positioned, okay? So basically what's happening is when the user puts their inputs, say they put in the, so they put in 1, 2, and 3, what's going to happen here is it's going to go through this particular tuple that we have over here, and 1, 2, 3 is in the tuple. And all it's doing is it's going to take this particular road, okay? And it's going to print this. However, if that value is not in the tuple, it will take this path and it's just going to say access denied. Okay, so this is just like a bit of a think of it like a roadmap or something like that, and it can take different avenues based on the user's input or whatever we're passing these particular statements. And don't worry too much about it. We're going to go through this in the next video a lot more in depth and cover ways that we can utilize if and else statements along with elif statements to make decisions based on user input. All right, so that's it for today. I hope you got a basic understanding of how this all works, and I hope you now understand how to use tuples, sets, and lists in programs.